While object mode restricts us to dealing with a mesh object as a single entity, once we select an object and enter edit mode, we gain access to the vertices, edges, and faces that make up that object's mesh. We have two methods of moving from object mode to edit mode. We can either select edit mode from the drop-down list, or we can simply press the Tab key. Selecting object mode or pressing the Tab key for a second time will return us to object mode. Some of the elements we see in the 3D viewport change when we move to edit mode. The most obvious of these is the toolbar, where we suddenly have a great many more options. Other changes include a set of 3 buttons immediately to the right of the mode box. These buttons are used to define what type of elements we are going to select in our mesh: vertices, edges, or faces. Vertices is the default setting. An alternative way of making this selection is to press 1, 2, or 3 on the main part of the keyboard. Hold down the Shift key to allow more than one option to be selected. There's also a change in the text info area, naming only the view name and object selected, and a different set of headings in the menu. The icons at the top right now include a Mesh Edit Mode icon. Below this is a mirroring icon and mirror axis buttons, followed by an Auto Merge Vertices icon. The select methods we used in object mode also work in edit mode, so we can click on an element to select it. Notice that when we select a single vertex, it turns white, but we also get an orange highlight that reaches partway along the edges connected to that vertex. This is Blender's way of telling us which edges make use of that vertex. Hold down Shift and click on other elements to add to the selection. By the way, if we select the vertices at either end of an edge, we have, in effect, also selected that edge. And if we select all the vertices around a face, we have also selected that face. We can select every element of our mesh by pressing A, or deselect everything by pressing Alt-A. The other quick way to deselect everything is just to click in an area away from the selected object. Holding down Shift and clicking on an already selected element will deselect it. The first entry in the toolbar is the same as before, giving us all the other group selection methods: Tweak, which combines select and move; Box, Circle, and Lasso. The shortcuts to those last 3 selection methods, B, C, and Ctrl, and right button dragging also work. You can find out more detail about these selection methods in Video 11. When we select a group of elements, we should be aware that any elements that are not visible within the 3D viewport will not be selected. For example, here the final vertex of the cube's base is unselected because it could not be seen from the original viewpoint. Of course, we can orbit the cube and hold down the Shift key while selecting the final vertex. But an alternative way of selecting hidden elements is to switch on X-ray mode, which will make the normally hidden elements visible so that our selection method now catches every required element. Once we've selected the required elements, they can be moved, scaled, or rotated. This is done in exactly the same way as we did in object mode. We can press G to move and follow this with an axis letter and distance if required. S will scale in all directions equally, but we can also specify a direction and an amount. Finally, R will rotate, and an axis letter and angle can be included. Note that a single vertex cannot be scaled or rotated. For more detail on rotation, scaling, and moving, watch videos 14, 15, and 16. The selected elements can be deleted by pressing either X or the Delete key. When we do this, a pop-up menu will appear. It's here that we specify exactly what it is we want to delete: vertex, edge, or face. When we use these options for the first time, the results may surprise us. For example, if we select a single vertex on a cube and choose to delete only that vertex, edges and faces also disappear. But when we think about it a bit more, any edge or face that made use of the vertex we just deleted can no longer exist, and so they are also deleted. But if, with only our single vertex selected, we try to delete edges or faces, nothing will be removed, since the vertex on its own does not define an edge or a face. If we select two adjacent vertices, however, then we can delete the vertices or the edge. As we can see, the two options give entirely different results. If we select all the vertices around a face, then we can delete vertices, edges, or faces, getting a different result each time. Notice that the position of the origin remains unchanged irrespective of what is deleted. In fact, when we work in edit mode, the position of an object's origin never changes, even if we move every element in the mesh.